Welcome back to week 9, and in video 2 we are going to get into the details of the types of climate zones that exist on our planet. So how do we classify these different climates? Well, it's based mostly on temperature and precipitation characteristics. A climate zone is an area having fairly uniform climate, so similar temperature averages, similar precipitation. And the most commonly used system is the Köppen-Geiger system, and it divides the world up into climate zones on the basis of the average monthly air temperature and then the precipitation versus evaporation values. So how do we get these different climate zones? It's based on air temp and then precipitation. So the next video we're going to get into these details of how we divide into these different zones. So if we look at the US, we see 5 different climate zones: A, B, C, D, and H. Each of these, I'm going to go through what each of these are in the next few slides in detail, but you can see A is kind of this dark green, which we don't have a whole lot of. B is the lighter green that we see throughout the west. C is this darker green that we see over in the Midwest and over to the southeast. Sorry, a little bit of A down in Florida. Warm, humid area. D is going to be the yellow zones we see, kind of northern areas, high elevation areas. And then H is the really, really high areas that we can see throughout the US. So what do these different letters mean, and what do they indicate? By looking at this map, you can kind of get an idea as to what those represent. But if we go into some detail, so A, that dark green area in the tip of Florida, would be a tropical climate. So these are parts of Florida and then Puerto Rico. So you have tropical, wet climates that extend north and south from the equator to about 15 to 25 degrees in latitude. These climates have average temperatures greater than 64 degrees for the entire year, and annual precipitation of over 59 I believe that's inches of rain. So, warm, wet climate. And if I flip back here, you can see that zone exists down in the tip of Florida. So, warm, wet climate down there. The next one would be the B, dry climates. And we see the dry climates tend to be in the west, and the Rockies, in the desert type areas, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, places like that, which are going to be very dry. These are both from Big Bend National Park, which is located about here in the little tip here of Texas. So this climate feature is it's really dry. The potential for evaporation is far exceeds the potential for precipitation. So we have way more evaporation happening in these areas than we do precip. These zones extend from about 20 to 35 degrees north and south of the equator. So just another zone up from that previous wet A climate. And they also exist in areas where we have large continental regions in the mid-latitudes that are surrounded by mountains. So we have the orographic effect helping to encourage those dry conditions. The next one will be C. This is the moist subtropical mid-latitude climate. So if we look, C is this kind of dark greenish area on the map. We see a lot of the southwest US and the Midwest around Mississippi, and then out in our neck of the woods in Oregon or on the Cascades and out to the coast. So here we have generally has warm, humid summers with mild winters. Kind of explains where we exist. Humid summers might be a bit of a stretch where we are, but that is definitely a characteristic of the southwest US, or southeast US, sorry. And these extend from about 30 to 50 degrees latitude on the eastern and western borders of most continents, close to the ocean. During the winter, the main weather feature would be mid-latitude cyclones, and that's what we have here all winter long, bringing all the rain that we get in the wintertime. And then oftentimes there's some thunderstorms that dominate the summer months, which we get some warnings here, but also big and very, very common in the southeast U.S. So this is the C zone. The next one would be D, and you can see it's the yellow areas on the map. Northern parts of the U.S., higher elevation areas. So this climate zone is the moist continental mid-latitude climate. So these have warm, cool summers and cold winters. I can attest to that, being from the upstate New York area. The location of these climates is poleward of the sea climate, so just north of all those sea climates, because we're a higher latitude, and we get less of that insulation energy from the sun to create the warmer temperatures in the winter. The average temperature in the warmest month is usually greater than 50 degrees Fahrenheit. The coldest month is less than 22 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty stinking cold. That's when you are outside and you can just feel the cold freezing your nostrils. It's just really, really cold. Winters in these areas usually are very severe, extremely cold, big snowstorms, strong winds, because we have this bitter cold coming from the continental polar or Arctic air masses moving into these zones. So this is some pictures of Maine in the summer and fall, when there isn't a ton of snow on the ground. And you can imagine this area just with a blanket of snow everywhere, and temperatures below zero in the winter. So just again to show you where that is, all the northernmost areas of the northeast, midwest area, but on the north side, and then in some of the more mountainous regions in the west. And then our last zone that we'll talk about is, well, it's not on this one, second to last, sorry, would be just north of us. If we have a map of Canada, we would see this one, but this would be the polar climates, is zone E. And this is where we have year-round cold temperatures, warmest month less than 50 degrees Fahrenheit. These are found in northern coastal areas of North America, Europe, Asia, and Greenland and Antarctica. So it's common to be very, very cold in these climates. We see lots of glaciers, sea ice being present in the wintertime. So the last one we'll talk about, last climate zone, is the one we can see on this map here, is the H zones. And those are areas that are very high in altitude. So it's called H for Highlands. So these have unique climates based on their elevation. So because they're higher elevation, we have rapid elevation change, rapid climate change over a short distance. So we get up higher in elevation, we have cooler temperatures, so we end up with zones that show similar polar characteristics some of the time, but can be surrounded by other climates. Like here we see these in Colorado, they're surrounded by the C and the B climate zones. So H, high elevation zones. So I have a couple ways to look at these zones around the world. This website here, if we pull it up for you, you have a link to this Jetstream Online School of Weather, or for weather, and this is the climate zone map. You can get a better view of it if you click on your own computer. You can see all the different climate zones that exist around the world. You should recognize the capital letter is the main climate category, so what we just talked about, the A, the B, C, D, E, and then the highland areas are not totally shown on here, but they are going to be white on these maps. And then if you this Köppen classification system is actually divided up into even smaller categories, and that's what these lowercase letters are. And here you can kind of scroll through and see the second letter next to that capital is based on the precipitation pattern. So F would be wet year-round, S would be dry summer, W, dry winter, M, monsoon. And then the third letter is an additional division based on the pattern. So hot summer, warm summer, cool summer, very cold winter. So kind of adding all sorts of stuff. And if you want to see and read through what each of those symbols mean that are on the map, you can check this out. I'm not going to read it to you. You guys can explore this on your own time. To give you, this is kind of overview. Again, we have capital letters and major division, and then we group them into smaller divisions based on specific characteristics. Here's just another view of this, and we see it's kind of broken up into the different climate zones here, the major ones and then the different ones within. You also have a link to this. And then there's another map you can check out is the GeoAtlas program that you have linked in the course information additional website area. You can click on climate zones over here under the atmosphere section, and then we can highlight each type. So on this map, things are kind of color coded, where the tropical areas are all reddish, the arid are all yellow, moist are all green for C, and then the other one is all blue because that's cooler temperatures. Polar are white, highlands are gray. So if you want to highlight these, like check out where the highlands are, you can see it corresponds to major mountain ranges all around the world. If we want to highlight tropical, we can actually highlight each of these individual ones and see the different categories. The arid zones as well, we can check out those. You can see the center of Australia, Africa, parts of the southwest US. And then here's the next one. You can see it's the next zone out from those BW. So these are a little bit the W in that. If we flip back to our slide here, the W means dry winter, and the S on this one refers to dry summer. So we just see just a little slight difference in those. So cool website to check out if you're curious for where these exist. And here you can see as you click on these different ones, you see a different description of what conditions are like in those areas, which is pretty neat. So I'll let you guys play around with that on your own time. And again, that's at Module 1 Map, Climate Zones. So those are the main climates. We'll come back in the next video and talk about what produces these different climates.